Hello and welcome to another edition of the Back Nine Report. Every week, Fred Altvater and I check in on the world of golf to bring you the latest news, insights, analysis, interviews, recaps, previews. Hey, we cover anything and everything golf. In other words, if it happened in golf, we have it for you. But today, this week is Ryder Cup week, so come on, we gotta do it. We gotta bring in the great European golf guru, Kieran Clark, to be with us. And Kieran, hi, how are you today?
Well, I'm very well, Carlos, and I'm very, very excited about the Ryder Cup. We've waited 3 years for this edition. The Ryder Cup, obviously one of the great weeks in golf, but also really one of the great events in sport. It transcends golf. It brings more eyes to the game. People love the atmosphere, that head-to-head match play, team match play element to it. So it's one of the great events, and obviously Europe, as we'll talk about here, have done rather well in the past, several decades, really. And it's about time the US start to improve, and there's no better place to do that than Whistling Straits. So big, USA are big favourites, strong team, but never underestimate Europe, Carlos.
Never do. And that's why, Fred, today we're going to be talking about why the Europeans have been able to dominate. But first of all, how are you today?
Hey, fantastic, guys. Coming off a week last week where I got in 6 rounds of golf at some great golf courses up here in northern Michigan. But it's Ryder Cup week. I'm excited just as much as you guys. Looking forward to it. It's like Kieran said, it's been 3 years. The USA took a real beat down 3 years ago in France, 17.5 to 10.5. They've lost 9 of the last 12 Ryder Cups contested. And since continental Europe was added in the mix in 1979, Euros have won 11 of 20 Ryder Cups competed. So it's time for the United States to get back on the horse. What do they have to do to win this thing?
I don't know, Fred. I don't know. It's so difficult for them to understand. They would seem to have a lot in their favor at the Ryder Cup this year. Once again, they're at home soil at Whistling Straits along the Wisconsin shore of Lake Michigan. They not only that, but a full house is expected, and it should be on their favor because they should be louder. Because the usual cheering for the Stars and Stripe, because of the COVID-19 travel restrictions for European-based fans, they won't be here. So it's another one for them. As for the players, younger than ever, to be sure, but no less stacked. The Americans have 8 of the top 10 players in the world rankings. Europe only has John Ram. Until now, I just realized Rory McIlroy is not a top 10 player. He's not even above Victor Hovland. But anyway, this is nothing new, of course, with one exception. The Americans usually always bring a better collection of players to the Ryder Cup. But Kieran, they rarely leave with a precious gold trophy lately. So what you think is the key to Europeans being so good lately at the Ryder Cup?
Well, I think it's a really complex question and a really interesting one. And it goes back a very long time. We're going back to the 1980s. And really, it starts with the European team, generally speaking, has been very strong throughout all that time. The world rankings haven't always suggested that, but the world rankings tend to be very much geared towards the US PGA Tour. So it's a little bit skewed. So you go back to the 1980s, you had the likes of Seve Ballesteros, Bernard Langer, Ian Woosnam, Sandy Lyle, Nick Faldo. They were the best players in the world at that time. But the second tier players, the guys like Sam Torrance, Howard Clark, Mark James, they were just as good as the American equivalents, if not better. They played predominantly in Europe, didn't play much in America or in the majors, and that affected their ranking. But as golfers, they were very, very good. But good players have always been a major thing for Europe. But it's great teams. They make great teams, and they come together so well. And I think there's so many reasons for that. And I think on one hand, it's their strength, but it's also a weakness of America. And the two things come together and create this dynamic where Europe just seems to get the better of America more often than not in the Ryder Cup. So I think the Europeans come together really well. They have this little chip on their shoulder. It goes back to the old days of being European Tour, the smaller tour, trying to show they can compete with the big name American golfers. And that was the case for a long time. And while it's not so much now, because most of these guys play in the US too, ultimately that culture, that history has been passed down through teams, through generations. And it's created that dynamic of they come together as a unit where America's playing, Team USA is playing for the United States, they're playing for their country. And that brings a certain pressure to it as well. Whereas the European team, yes, they're playing for the European Tour, yes, it's continental Europe, but the reality is they're playing for each other. So that smart team of those 12 guys, the captain, the vice captains, the caddies, they all come together and they're playing as a team. They're not playing for a country, they're not playing necessarily for a tour, they're playing for each other. And I think as a dynamic, it makes them really, really strong. Another thing too, the Europeans come together. For them, this 1 week, the Ryder Cup, for them when they get here, it's the biggest week of the year. Yes, they could have won majors, they could have won big championships. This 1 week of the year, it's the biggest event for them, and they show up collectively. Whereas the American players, with some exceptions, of course, but generally speaking, the American players just don't quite have that same approach to it. And I think there's a more seriousness to the US players, whereas the European players, I think, they seem to enjoy it more. Collectively and individually, they embrace the pressure, they embrace the atmosphere, they embrace the challenge. Where the American guys seem to play with the weight of the weight of the country on their shoulders. And I think that plays out. So while the US has a lot of dominance on paper, fantastic individual players, when you try and piece them together, more often than not, Carlos, the European team just seems to look strong. And even though this year, yes, on paper, the US team is younger, it's stronger, it points to home victory. But the more you look at it, you think, these European guys, they come together really well, and they might just cause an upset here.
They might. And I was just talking this week with a friend at work, and I was telling them, look, what I think this reminds me of is like the Rocky against Drago type of match. And I'm going to explain why. The Europeans really, it's not that they don't take it seriously, but they don't take it so professionally that I have to be perfect in every decision I make. They do these videos, joking around, which shows, they can actually enjoy what the Ryder Cup is all about. And they bring that camaraderie here to be playing. And Fred, I was listening to Paul Asinger, who still thinks he speaks like it's back in 2008 when he was the U.S. captain, saying, we have the best players this year. And obviously they, of course, talking about Europe, then roll in with the most confidence and maybe the best team. Confidence, yes, they do, because they know what it's all about. But I see in the US team, Fred, this thing about the putt systems and making sure that we have the proper pairing because of this stats and here and there. And then you see that the Europeans come and pick Ian Poulter, Sergio Garcia, and you say, like, what? Why? Aren't they too old? No, they are perfect for the Ryder Cup. And until the U.S. really realize, the trick is for the Americans to realize that. At the Ryder Cup in France 3 years ago, the U.S. just as loaded with 9 major champions on the 12-man team who had combined to win 10 out of the last 16 majors. They got smoked again, Fred. When are they going to realize that?
Yeah, the U.S. team is unbelievable. 8 of the top 10 players in the world are on the U.S. team. The European players if you look at the world rankings, they're down in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s. So if you look at it just at that, you say, well, this is really lopsided. Kieran said, well, once again, the European team comes in as the underdog. I don't understand how they come in as the underdog. They've won 9 out of the last 12 of these things, right? I don't care what the numbers say. And they keep bringing in these old dogs. They bring in Westwood. They bring in Garcia. They bring in, I'm surprised Patty Harrington isn't lacing up the shoes for this thing and getting his clubs out. They bring these guys in. They've played a lot of Ryder Cups. They only have a very minimal number of rookies on there. They have to really play their way in. They're not going to pick them, as you see when Patty picked Lowry, Sergio, and Ian Poulter. Ian Poulter, we were laughing before we went on the air. He's going to still be on his deathbed. He's going to get up and come and play in the Ryder Cup and probably win 3 points for the European Cup in 20 years or something, because he just loves this thing so much. But Brandon Chambly made a really good point that kind of hit home to me on live from the Ryder Cup from Whistling Straits just earlier this evening, actually. He said, you look at Sergio, at Seve when he played, And Sevi was obviously the best player from Europe. But when he played in the team, you would see him, even if he wasn't playing, he was out there on the course, maybe with his arm around somebody's shoulder that wasn't playing well, say, hey, we're all this together, buddy. You know, nobody's any better than anybody. Just go ahead, play your game. We'll pick you up. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. How many times have you seen that happen on the U.S. team? You know, we saw it in Solheim Cup, Julie Inkster with Lexi Thompson a couple times ago, you know, where she had to kind of pick her up. You see this kind of thing in a team atmosphere. You don't see Brooks Koepka going over to Bryson DeChambeau and putting his arm around his shoulder and say, "Come on, Bry, it's okay, buddy. You'll get it back. It'll be all right. You'll get him tomorrow. Don't worry about it." That's not the mindset of the American players. They play for themselves. They've already been successful. They come in, you know, with this pretty big ego, and you know, hey, I'm pretty good. You know, I earned my trip here, and I'm going to do my thing, and whether I win or lose, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go in and win more majors or win big events or win several $1 million. So what happens here doesn't really matter. Where I think Kieran also made a good point that for the Europeans, this is their Daytona 500. This is their World Series. This is their big deal. They want to prove that the European tour, the European players are on par with the American players. It doesn't matter they come over here and win majors and win PGA Tour events. They want to show that they can do it as a team, and Europe is still viable. So those two things, I guess, is kind of what it boils down to me, that's important. And the other thing is the Americans still they sure don't know how to play foursome. They can't figure it out. I don't know. We've only been doing it now. This is what, the 43rd Ryder Cup. We still can't figure out how to play foursome. So good luck on that one.
Well, you know, one of the things the Europeans do is they accept their underdog role, right? They relish it. They want to be always that, and they seem to play with a chip on their shoulders, perhaps because the Americans don't, and probably should have on one of theirs, because like you're saying, they have lost 9 of the last 12. But anyway, the Europeans do always come here to play. It doesn't matter how the course is set up. They have the knowledge, and they prepare their team always to come and do the best as a team. Doesn't matter what the course setup does. But Kieran, any final words on this topic about the dominance of Europe lately here on the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, Fred touched on the foursomes format and how dominant Europe has been on this. So the wonderful guy on Twitter called Nosferatu, he's not a vampire, but he's what he might actually be, to be fair, but he's a world ranking expert, fantastic stats guy. He came up with this great stat the other day on Twitter. I urge you to follow him. The handle is @VC606. Go and follow him, it's fantastic. And he revealed in the 21st century, so since 2002 Ryder Cup to now, Europe has won 4 balls, 37 points to 35, foursomes 41 to 31, and singles 60 to 48. So Europe, really over the past 20 years, has just dominated every format, and that's extraordinary. So that underlines the dominance isn't just in foursomes, but it's in all formats. And your friend's right to focus on the foursomes, because in the end, ultimately, that's the biggest place where you have to play with a partner and become part of a team. In the other formats, you're more or less on your own out there. Singles, definitely. Even in 4 balls, it's your ball. It's your pressures on you individually. Whereas foursomes, that's when you come together as a team. And the thing is, as well, as quick before I finish here, Europe obviously is made up of small countries. You know, Spain couldn't beat the US in the Ryder Cup. Scotland couldn't beat the US in the Ryder Cup. England couldn't beat the US in the Ryder Cup. France couldn't. But collectively, you're right, they can. I think that coming together, they come together as nationalities because they all know collectively they have to come together to win against a much bigger nation. Obviously, together, Europe is bigger than the US, but individually, it's not. And I think that all plays a part into creating this team atmosphere that Europe just embraces. So until the American players change their mindset, and you know, when they come to this, and it will still, even if they win this week, the trend I think will still be the same overall, because until they change their mindset and their attitude, it'll still be a struggle for them. That said, it's a very young team for the US. You know, new guys coming in here with fresh memories, no scar tissue from the past, and that could be a really positive for them. So It's going to be a fascinating week, Carlos. But as I always say, never underestimate Europe, and certainly do not underestimate Padraig Harrington. He might pull off a major upset here, or is an upset. Who knows? We could argue, as Fred said, maybe Europe. Maybe despite what it says on paper, perhaps they're actually the favourites. We'll wait and see.
Patty Harrington had me a little scared because he was playing in the Pro-Am with Tom Holland, the Spider-Man actor. And I don't remember the hole they were playing, but Tom Holland plays pretty good golf. And then he was challenging him to, get the ball in the green. It was, I think it was about 230 some yards, but it had to like hook it a little bit. And he told Tom Holland, look, if you make it to the green, I'll pick you for the Ryder Cup. Because Tom Holland tell him, hey, I need some motivation. So motivation, okay, here it is. If you put it on the green, I'll pick you for the Ryder Cup. And I'm like, what are you gonna do if Tom Holland puts it on the green? And Tom took it seriously, and he took an aim, and it was really close. And Patty said, "You got me worried there for a second." But that's the kind of the way that they approach these things. I know he wasn't going to do it, but that's the way that you see how they truly approach that. And Fred, any final words, what you think about this European dominance?
Well, I think it boils down to what happens on Friday. If the Europeans come out of Friday with a 2-point lead from those eight matches, and they can carry that over and go into singles, the U.S. Then the U.S. starts pressing even more. They got the pressure of not winning this thing, of the rest of the country on their shoulders, trying to, the pressure builds on them, and then they all have to do better. It just puts more pressure on the United States, and the Europeans just keep freewheeling and doing their thing, and not forcing the issue. They just let the U.S. guys make the mistakes. So if Europe can continue their dominance in the foursomes through the first couple days and come out of those first couple days with a 1 or 2 point lead, I think they're going to win again.
Well, we'll see about that, and we have a special nugget on that and who we think is going to win. So that's going to be our next one pretty soon. But anyway, in here, we hope you got our take on why the Europeans have been dominant lately. That's 9 out of 12. Lately, it's been a little while now. But anyway, 9 out of 12 have been won by the European. Last time the U.S. won was last decade, 2016 in Hazeltine, when Europe had 6 rookies on that squad. It's not happening anymore. So we'll see. But anyway, thank you for joining us. Remember to follow our show here. Subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with the latest in our videos there in golf news and information. Also follow us on the Back Nine Report. Thank you for joining us.